Now, I want to start by focusing on the fact that there is a lot going on in our country. Most of it has to do with mandars and religion, and the conversation has largely become divisive. But I made a promise to you that we would always focus on issues that impact your life. We would focus on stories that impact you more than stories that whip up emotion. So we're asking a question tonight, and it's a question about our economy. And the reason why we have to ask this is because our economy affects how we live our lives, how much we earn, what our next salary is going to be, and what the expenses to run our homes are. Now let's remember that the last growth number or GDP number came in at 8.2 for the first quarter this year. But there are other worrying numbers that should not be ignored. The rupee, which has devalued drastically against the dollar and remains at 73 or more than that, is at the worst it has ever been. Now this has a direct impact on the price of fuel, and we're familiar with the price of fuel. It has risen continuously over the last 3 weeks, wiping out entirely any tax cut that the government gave us. Fuel prices in turn have a direct impact on inflation and the price of food. Now the wholesale inflation growth, or WPI, came in at 5.2 in September, up from 4.3 in August. Now this is well outside the comfort level of the government. The RBI's Industrial Outlook survey found that manufacturers are expecting the cost of raw material to rise as well. Now this will lead to higher selling prices, and that will lead to the RBI increasing interest rates in the future. This is a serious concern also. Bad loans in our public sector banks. 26 banks altogether have now 7.3 lakh crore rupees that they are unlikely to recover. These banks will receive a bailout from the government of India, which is effectively our money that should be used on roads and hospitals and education and welfare. And that brings us to jobs. A recent report by the Azim Premji University Center of Sustainable Growth has said growth in GDP has not resulted in growth in jobs. The report has gone on to point that between 2013 and 2015, total employment shrank by 7 million. And since then, there's been an absolute decline in jobs. Our stock market, for example, has begun a worrying decline in September and has fallen nearly 4,000 points since then. Now, there's a lot of conflicting numbers, and statistics we all know can be bent and read any way we choose to. The question we have to ask is this: is our economy in trouble? And to answer that question, we only have 4 guests, but 4 very well qualified guests. Mohan Guruswamy, senior economist and the chairperson for the Center for Policy Alternatives, used to be an advisor to the Finance Minister of India. Gopal Agarwal, national spokesperson of the BJP. Santosh Mehrotra, professor of economics at the Center for Informal Sector and Labour Studies, JNU. And Vinod Jain is a chartered accountant. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I understand 2 of you believe our economy is in trouble and 2 of you disagree. Each panelist will be given 90 seconds on the clock to make opening arguments. We will not interrupt each other. The idea is to help the audience understand if we really are in trouble or not. There will be a buzzer that goes off when you have about 10 seconds to go, and a second one when your time is up. After everyone has had their chance to make opening arguments, we will then open up for rebuttals and phone calls from our audience. But we're going to start the conversation now on the big economy debate on whether or not we're in trouble. Is India's economy in distress, and should we as average citizens be worried? Opening arguments from Mr. Mohan Guruswamy. I'm going to start with you first. Your 90 seconds on the clock begin now. Mr. Guruswamy, are we in trouble?
Of course we're in trouble. We've been in trouble for quite some time now, but now things are coming to a head. The simple facts of the matter are that 1% of India's population owns 55.5% of its wealth. The top 10% accounts for 75% of its wealth, and the bottom 60% of the population accounts for 4.7% of its wealth. The problem is that we have too many poor people. The problem is that we don't have jobs to get them off their poverty trap, and that is the main problem. We're just not creating jobs. And we're not creating jobs because we don't make investments in capital expenditure. We don't have new construction work going on. We have no new building projects. Government has absolutely gotten out of capital expenditure. You're leaving it to the private sector. The private sector doesn't have that much money. The profitability of private sector has also been coming down. So that is our problem. We just don't use money efficiently, and we're running short of money. The tax GDP ratio has been dropping year after year, and it used to be at what, almost 37%. Now it's about 28%. And unless you collect taxes and your GDP keeps growing up, you need to collect more taxes and you need to make more investments. So we're missing that. We keep looking at growth. Now, what is happening with growth is accumulating to a small number of people. The new Oxfam report says that 73% of the new wealth created in the last decade has gone to 1%. Now, that is your problem. How do you spread this wealth around? How do you create more jobs? And how do you make growth more even? Now, that is your problem. And that we are not able to attend to. Either the UPA couldn't do it, and the NDA has completely failed in attending to it. And that is our, situation.
All right, Mr. Guruswamy, your time's up. Gopal Agarwal, the points raised by Mohan Guruswamy was that we are currently suffering from a serious problem of poverty. We're not creating enough jobs. We're mismanaging our money. And our income from taxes has been dropping drastically. Your 90 seconds begin now. Mr. Gopal Agarwal, national spokesperson of the BJP. Do you believe or do you agree that our economy is in trouble?
Whatever Mr. Guruswamy said, I agree to most of the part, but that relates to 2014. That was the reason after 65 years that our economy came to such a position that the growth was concentrated to few people. And that's what we have tried to correct during these 4.5 years. The delivery mechanism has been made very transparent. The social security schemes of the government are going directly. There are no leakages in the one side. And on the collection side also, the tax collection which was being paid by individual citizens of the country was not reaching to the government system coffers, and that has also been corrected through GST mechanism and other banking transaction mechanism. And at present, macroeconomic factors which are dependent on domestic economic conditions are quite robust. Whether you look into inflation, it is less than the targeted 5%, it is around 4%. There we have a GDP growth rate of 8.2%. We have large foreign exchange reserves. We have largest FDI flow from across the globe. And current account deficit is also under control. Fiscal deficit is under control. And the government, the biggest problem we faced was that the banking sector was reeling under pressure, which also has been corrected through IBC is resolving. Today only a report came how IBC first time has been able to resolve these issues. So I think key factors with regard to employment, etc., are with regard to only government employees, and it is not tackling about the informal sector, where the focus of our government is macro, MSME sector, self-employment, etc. So if you see,
Mr. Agarwal, your time is up.
I think our GDP economy is going, yes, 10 seconds more. There are some factors affecting like global oil prices and rupee falling. These are global factors that also is government considering, but they are not under control of the government alone. They have global effects.
All right, here are the points that were raised. Mr. Gopal Agarwal, you did say that the last 65 years economy has been mismanaged. Are you unfortunately also including that the government of Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee in those 65 years of calculation before 2014, also you did say that our forex reserves are very high, forest reserves are depleting. You did say that our deficits are on target. We understand that deficits might not entirely be met, and you did talk about the banking sector, which has currently the worst number of NPAs. But Santosh Mehrotra, your argument on whether or not our economy is in trouble, your time starts now. Mr. Mehrotra, go ahead.
Thank you. You see, there is some truth in what Mr. Gurumurthy has said, as well as in what Mr. Gopal Agarwal has said.
Mr. Guruswamy, please.
So I'm going to sort of focus a little bit on things that they haven't really spoken about. First of all, we have entered a phase where, although in the last 3 or 4 years the inflation rate has been very low, we all know that oil prices have been rising on the one hand, and secondly, At the same time, the rupee has been depreciating, and this will feed into much higher inflation. That inflation rate might be low just now, but it will definitely feed into higher inflation. It's already showing up in the price of oil and petrol, and LPG. But more importantly, you see, oil, diesel, all of this is an input into other products. So this is point one as far as inflation is concerned. The second thing is that, the current account deficit as a result of this has been worsening. Now, unfortunately, despite the fact that the international economy was doing much better, and Europe has revived and is reviving, and the US had already revived, and it has one of its lowest unemployment rates, one would have expected that we would have managed to increase our export revenues. If we had managed to increase our exports over the last 4 years, I think the current account deficit would not have damaged us so much. Unfortunately, our exports are pretty much now at the same level as they were 4 years ago. They had actually gone down. So we've only just begun to reach the same level as we were in 2014. And thirdly and finally, we were beginning to recover when the oil prices hit, and now unfortunately it looks as though the recovery is going to be impacted. As far as poverty is concerned, I think we have to remind ourselves we don't have data on what has happened to the incidence of poverty in the last 4 or 5 years, but we do know that there was a dramatic decline in the numbers of the poor between 2004-05 and 11-12. Unprecedented in our history. The numbers of the poor fell by 140 million, and that was because our growth rate was 8% per annum on average for a 10-year period. And our growth rate since then has been much lower. Not much lower, but it has been lower. We might be the fastest growing large economy, but it has been lower. So, and that's not surprising because our investment rate has fallen.
Right. I'm just going to quickly also take this across to Vinod Jain. Vinod Jain, you believe that our economy is not in trouble. Your 90 seconds begin now to tell us why you believe the economy is not in trouble.
You see, I don't talk on the basis of statistics. I talk based on the market feedback because I work very closely with the actual business market. As you see, for example, I am a director on Coal India board. I think from that itself, there is an indication of the way the economy is growing. In last 1 year itself, the coal demand, for example, has gone up by more than 30%, primarily because the power demand has gone up. There is demand from power sector, from the cement sector, from the steel sector, from all sectors. It has actually skyrocketed and it picked up very substantially, which itself indicate where our economy is going. So when you see actually the way the infrastructure is developing, around us we see the way metro network is coming, the way road network is coming, almost every place is now connected with good quality roads thanks to our current in charge of the road construction. It is going in the right direction. The villages are connected by the electricity. And you see, I feel that rupee down valuation as well as petrol prices, this issue is being overplayed. This cannot really dominate the entire economy. We see consumer spending has gone up. We see automobile sector is going up. We are also seeing actually employment increasing. I don't agree with this data which was given by Ajim Premji Foundation. The way the new startups have come, the way new initiatives are coming up, of course industry is growing and growing and growing. One more thing which I like to say is, of course, as far as US is concerned, the dollar rate got impacted because of the reduction in the income tax rates, also increase in their interest rates. The corresponding move has been done by Europe, but I think India has yet to take a lead now to reduce its tax rate. That's why a lot of investment across the world have started flowing towards US, and that's why we see there is an impact on the rupee dollar rate. And rupee otherwise has strengthened against most of the other economies, other currencies. It is only dollar which is, of course, they are nosediving. Yeah.
All right, so this is what we're going to do. I'm opening this up to rebuttals at this point, and I'm opening it up to our viewers. Let's actually focus on a couple of main points that actually affect us as regular citizens. Jobs. Do we actually have jobs? Are we getting enough increments? Are we getting Diwali bonuses this year? Or do we see in our workplaces people getting laid off? People being removed from their jobs? That's the question to the audience. share your responses with us on the phone. The phone lines at the bottom of your screen. But rebuttals right now, Mr. Guruswamy, you heard the arguments made by Gopal Agarwal and Vinod Jain. Gopal Agarwal believes that this government has done plenty to improve the economy that was in a bad state, and Mr. Jain believes that the data does not actually coincide with what's happening on the ground. He says what's happening on the ground is healthy and well. Mr. Guruswamy, your rebuttal, please.
Now, Mr. Agarwal spoke about jobs. The entire claim of this government on new jobs depends on how much of money they have given under this Mudra scheme. Now, the Mudra scheme today is a composite of all the old employment schemes and the MSME and small industry loan schemes. All that together is now called Mudra. So it's not a new scheme. What you can, and the Prime Minister now claims that because of this Mudra, you've created 70 million new jobs. And this is the thing which they are tom-tomming and going around. Now, if you actually put more money in Mudra, then the bank refinance would show it up. The total bank refinance so far for Mudra, additional refinance, has been 3,000 crores. So where is the money gone? Whatever is there from before. Nothing has changed. So where are the new jobs coming from? Now this is a figment of their imagination, and they're playing propaganda, and this is going on because, how do you prove or disprove these things? Then you have small companies which are now employing more than 20 people. So you have 19 to 21, then you come under EPFO. And that is a normal process. They show that as 20 new jobs added. Now, if you keep fudging and playing ducks and drakes with data like this, then everything is wonderful and rosy. Why is there so much agitation in the country? Why is there a breakdown of law and orders in large tracts of the country? Why are farmers agitating? So there is distress, and you must understand that there is reason for distress, and you face those strikes and deal with them, rather than live in some fool's paradise, saying everything is wonderful, and we're doing fine. What about growth? The other gentleman speaks now of greater power demand. The fact is that 24% of the thermal plants are now shut down because demand is just remains static. What we've got is become more efficient in usage of power. Now he says that his personal experience is far superior to the data available. Now how can you discuss something like this? Are we trivializing this whole thing, saying, I know better because I'm on Coal India? Wonderful, you're on Coal India. Samvit Patra is on ONGC. All you guys are well employed and provisioned on your board meeting, but you think you know the truth? You look for data. Look at what the Niti Commission is putting out. Look at what Center for Monitoring in the Indian economy is putting out. Look at what the World Bank is putting out. Look at what all associations are putting out. And then you correlate with what you see. You don't do that. You say, no, they're all wrong and I'm right because I'm sitting here on this board and I know what the demand is. Now that is, and today we are burning so much of coal that we are polluting our air. Today there's a big story underway right now, which is the New York Times is going to carry in the next day or two, on how we are fouling the environment and not complying with the protocols we've signed on the Paris Accord. And we're burning more and more low-grade coal.
Yes,
because we don't have money now to import coal from high-grade coal from Australia. Prices have gone up. We've got old PPAs on. So we're in all kinds of problems here. Deal with them, yeah. Face the facts, lay it out and deal with them. Don't keep bluffing the country.
Well, Mr. Gopal Agarwal, if we speak specifically about jobs and your response to Mohan Guruswamy's questions, let's take the fact that every time the government opens up options for jobs, you get millions of applications, whether it's the railways, whether it's the UP police, the Mumbai police, constable jobs. We have people with bachelor's and master's degrees and PhDs applying for these positions. Obviously, there is a lack of jobs in the market. Otherwise, why would someone who has done his engineering apply for a job as a constable and we have millions of applications per opening every time the government opens for jobs? Why do you think that is, Mr. Agarwal?
I would like to say that certain parameters are being blown out of proportion. What the Prime Minister says or other EPSO data says, they are being wrongly quoted. We say Mudra loan is an important factor in creating jobs in the private sector and promoting entrepreneurship and creating jobs in the manufacturing sector. That doesn't mean that that is the only criteria through which we are dealing with the job problem. The second thing is we have ourselves said that EPFO data is only considers the formalization of majority of formalization of informal sector to the formal sector, and that's also an important part of creating quality jobs. Ultimately, if you in the informal sector, the quality of job and social security was very bad, and the job problem is also tackled by creating better social security in the informal sector, bringing informal sector to the formal sector. That's also part of better environment in the job creation. The third important factor is when we are creating, spending 10 lakh to 11 lakh crores on the infrastructure development, whether in the roads, whether into bridges, whether into rural roads, 30 kilometers, all these activities which are being done at the ground, are they being done without any job creation? How can you say this? Then we have done so much on the construction sector, universal account number. So we are working on quality of jobs. Okay. No, let me finish. No, 10 seconds more, 10 seconds. Okay. The third most important part is that what you do is everybody is running after government job, and that is not possible in an economy where 2 crore jobs, government jobs cannot be created across the globe. It is by self-entrepreneurship and self-employment.
But didn't you promise, Mr. Agarwal?
You are completely missing that portion in the debate. And the agriculture sector also, where we are focusing on doubling of income, alternative employment. Earlier, all focus was just creating production increase. That was not creating goodwill for the farmer sector. So you have to consolidatedly take these things.
Okay, first of all, Gopal Agarwal, you are now turning around and saying we cannot create crores of jobs, but the truth is you promised to create crores of jobs before you came into government. At that point, you didn't say we will create alternate employment
and we will... No, I said government jobs.
Okay, so how many jobs has the government created?
No, I said government jobs, no, but...
Yeah. Okay, how many jobs? Formal, informal, government, public, private, how many jobs have been created? Do you have a number?
Not the full number, but ultimately when you have to consolidatedly take the quality of jobs that are coming from the informal to informal sector, how many people, around 70 lakh people have been included into the formal sector, then Mudra loan is another.
No, one second. Mr. Gopal Agarwal, it has been proven that the 70 lakh data point has been, if you're taking it from the EPFO data, I'm afraid that data cannot be extrapolated, and you cannot say that because so many...
It is a formalization.
No. And also, are you telling us that when the formalization, that these people survived demonetization, that the informal sector survived demonetization, that the people employed in the real estate and the construction sectors survived demonetization, that these people continue to have jobs a year and a half, 2 years down the line? These are questions that we have to ask. The questions that we have to ask is why don't we have a white paper on demonetization in this government yet? But first, I have someone on the phone line and we will take as many calls as we can. Asha is on the phone line from Bangalore. Asha, go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yes, Asha.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Firstly, I would like to, I was hearing to the debate on the television. What I understand is because of the petrol prices going high, and the rupee not coming down, I think the common man's life is terribly affected here.
Why do you say that?
Understanding the economy going up, going down is a secondary thing. And the other thing is, you have everything on a statistics basis saying at 2014 it was like this and at 2018 we are like this. I think that doesn't, really come to the point. We'll have to first see what is affecting the common man and how a common man's life is affected. The rest of the things really don't come into the picture. Today, we are really suffering because at the end of the day, there are no savings in a common man's pocket. We'll have to go into schools, we'll have to, pay our mobile bills. Everything has become so very expensive. And I don't understand how the economy, what is it? I mean...
Okay. So Asha, your main point is inflation and the fact that it's eating out of, and it always does, it eats out of the savings of the average citizen. Amol on the phone line from Mumbai. Amol, go ahead, please. Right, we seem to have lost that connection. We'll try and get him back. Santosh Mehrotra, your rebuttal to what Gopal Krishna Agarwal was saying, and he specifically talked about the fact that you need to count informal and formal jobs. He talked about 70 lakh people who have been added to the formal sector from the informal sector, and that should count in jobs. The jobs or the self-employment that the government has created and the infrastructure that the government is building, that will lead to jobs. Mr. Mehrotra, your rebuttal, please.
That will create job.
Yes. First of all, and what I'm going to cite is government's own data. The annual survey of the Labour Bureau has a sample size the same as and larger than the national sample survey, and that demonstrates unmistakably that the open unemployment rate, people who have no employment, has risen from 2.2% in 2012 to 3.4% in 2016 on average. Since then, we have data for the from the Center for the Monitoring of the Indian Economy, and that is showing even higher unemployment rates. Point one. Point two, that there has been formalization of jobs from the informal sector of about 70 lakhs. That's a very good thing, and it's happened because of the GST, which is a very good thing in its own right. And there is no question about that. However, I think most of the criticism about this has been that many people have made the claim, including some economists called Ghosh and Ghosh, that this is creation of new jobs, and everyone has questioned that, and rightly so. Formalization of erstwhile informal jobs is a very good thing. That's what has happened as a result of GST, not new jobs. Thirdly, you know, the point is repeatedly made that jobs are getting created in the informal sector. Now, the fact of the matter is that demonetization had a massive setback on the informal sector, and that setback is still being felt, and there is evidence of this in clusters across the country of unorganized sector, and that is being further confirmed and reinforced by the latest data for the last 2 years of the Center for the Monitoring of the Indian Economy. Finally, government jobs. Well, government doesn't create too many jobs in the first place. There are only 3.5% of the entire workforce in our country of 500 million people work in government. And for the last 20 years, government has not created new jobs. As far as Mudra is concerned, you know, on the one hand, Gurumurthy Sahab is right that 2/3 of all Mudra money is actually old loans which have been brought under Mudra, but 1/3 is new, supposedly new loans to new supposed startups. They are called startups, but the fact of the matter is that the average size of loans under Mudra has been no more than 49,000, and you know, the kind of jobs that are getting created, first of all, what kind of job will that create? Firstly. Secondly, it's very poor quality informal job. Now, finally, yes, it is true that public investment is raising some degree of employment in rural areas, but the fact of the matter is that the number of jobs that are being created are much smaller than the number of entrants into the labor force, which is hardly surprising because the investment rate
so
it
is true. We have millions of people hitting our labor force on a monthly basis in India. Remember, we are the youngest country in the world, which means that we have young people who need to be employed, and we are not able to employ them fast enough. Raghavan on the phone line from Chennai. Raghavan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, see, so many claims and counterclaims are being made by both the parties. As a political citizen, I would like to know, has there ever been a social audit conducted by an independent body on the various claims and achievements and regard to performance in various sectors, giving jobs or giving gas cylinders, laying of roads, all this stuff? Where is this authentic statistical backing by any
is anybody verifying? That's a very good question, Raghav. We also have Amol, who's back on the phone line from Mumbai. Amol, if you can hear me this time, what would you like to say?
Yes, Faye, I can hear you loud and clear. I'm working with the IT organization, and I'm following your debate very keenly. But I can very, very emphatically say that all these haze which has been created, that the lakhs of crores of jobs are being created is actually a fake. The experience has become a liability now. It's a young people's market. Even they are struggling to get a job. Unless you are really highly qualified with XLRI or TIPS and so on and so forth, you're not getting a job. And this is a completely a kind of a fake or facade which has been created by the government. I mean, the reality on the ground is there are layoffs which are happening. Earlier, it was used to happen in loads. Now they are doing it very, very smartly as part of the quarterly appraisal cycles and so on and so forth. So in organized sectors...
So Amol, you don't feel that our economy is doing well? You don't feel like we're creating enough jobs?
Not at all. Not at all.
All right. So I want to go back to Raghavan's question before we address Amol's point. Raghavan said, is there any organization that is verifying independently the claims of the government on the number of roads, number of gas cylinders, the infrastructure that is being built? Anyone who wants to answer this question, please let me know. Is there an independent organization that is not a government organization that can verify the claims being made by the government? Mr. Guruswamy, is there?
I don't think so. That
at present the biggest problem.
One second, Mr. Guruswamy, is there an independent agency that will verify this data for us?
It is the
No, we have agencies like the CMIE, and then we have trade associations which come up with statistics, put it all together. But the problem is that at one time the Planning Commission used to come out with data, and it was kind of one step away from government. And it was not an instrument of the government in the way that NITI has now become. So NITI itself says, we don't believe that data which comes out from the departments and the ministries. So you've got a problem on information. Now, because you don't have data, you don't rely on certain kinds of data, then you come up with conjure up all kinds of statistics. But I think at the best we have today is CMIE. And CMIE does a pretty thorough job of how many jobs are being created, what is it being invested, because and RBI is there, RBI data is there, which is pretty good. But RBI, there's a time lag, between because they collate it very carefully.
Right.
And RBI data is also not very encouraging now.
Right. I know Gopal Agarwal wanted to say something. Mr. Agarwal.
Scheme, we've given so many million cylinders.
Can I say something?
You've given...
Yes. Mr. Agarwal, we know that even the Labour Ministry has said we don't have enough data on this matter. But go ahead, Mr. Agarwal.
Bolo.
Yes, I agree that there is a problem of the data, but I would like to mention that our government had been keeping an accounting system through which they would only decide on everything based on what they spend. There has been no system where there has been a balance sheet side of accounting, two-way accounting, where you also record the asset creation. First time we have tried this with regard to Manrega, where we are working on asset creation also. Second thing is on the railway. Whole railway, the government is moving about double entry accounting system where we record the asset creation also. So the government is trying to move into that, but ultimately CAG is the only way which can verify the expenditure, and the government is only working on expenditure. And if you block the put the block to the leakages, that way the only way so that you get the social security schemes or whatever you spend get to the last mile connectivity. There are no
Mr. Gopal Agarwal, I have a quick question for you.
That we have been successful in through direct benefit transfer. And
Mr. Gopal Agarwal, quick question for you. The truth is,
the finance minister
just one second. Let me ask the question. The truth is that a lot of times the measure of how we measure success of government achievement has changed. We've changed the base year of GDP and how we're measuring GDP, how we're calculating GDP. We've done that with several other things. Take, for example, highways. You yourself said we're building highways in rural India. The truth is, in the last year, we've changed the way we measure highways. Earlier, if we built a 3-lane highway of 1 kilometer, it would be measured as 1 kilometer of highway built. Now, if we build a 3-lane highway of 1 kilometer, it's measured per lane as 3 kilometers of highway built, and now suddenly we're building 3 times, 4 times as many highways or as in length. Is that not true, Mr. Agarwal?
No, but if the change in the way this length of roads is considered, but that is not being compared with earlier time. When we are talking 30 kilometers a day, it is the total road. It is not per lane that we are comparing with earlier, that it was 9 kilometer, 11 kilometer. Now it is 30 kilometer, but it is a 6 lane divided by 6. No, it is not like that. When you compare 30 kilometer by 11 kilometer, it is the total rate lane. That has been changed for the future.
Well,
and for the
there have been enough data points being put out comparing our highway, comparing our current highway achievements with previous government highway achievements. And the truth is that, which is the question our viewers asking, how do we verify this? How do we background check it?
What you are talking is, but then how you were verifying this for last 65 years? This is the same problem. So this is not
fair
a
enough.
creation.
We're not saying it's a problem being created by this government. We're saying that there is a problem. All right, fair enough. Santosh Mehrotra has a point to make. Mr. Mehrotra has his hand up, please. Mr. Mehrotra, go ahead.
Mr. Rajiv Gandhi himself said that 85% of the money is being lost in the system.
Yes, Faye.
That has been blocked.
Yes, Faye.
So that is the way.
But Gopal Agarwal, to be fair, a lot of the young people who are looking for jobs right now were not born when Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister. Let's not go that far back into history.
Faye, thank you.
Santosh Mehrotra, go ahead.
Yes.
Faye, thank you very much. Yes. Thank you for noticing that I have a point to make. I think systematically there has been an effort over the last several months to tell us that we don't have good jobs data. The fact of the matter is that we have pretty solid, good facts and data on a national basis. That's why I began by saying that there is an annual survey of the Labour Bureau which has a sample size the same as the National Sample Survey, for which we have data all the way till 2016. And I have written about this in the Financial Express yesterday. Secondly, I think Mr. Guruswamy has rightly pointed out, and I am re-emphasizing that we must stop believing, and you, Faye, must stop saying that we don't have enough data or good data on jobs. We have excellent data on jobs up to 2015-16, thanks to the government, Labour Bureau, and since then, the Centre for the Monitoring of the Indian Economy, which has a sample size larger than the NSS. So therefore, let us start believing in that data because it is very rock solid data. And therefore, anyone who's questioning the Premji report, the Azim Premji University report, to which I contributed, I think doesn't know what they are talking about because they don't understand labor data. I think let's put this debate about data in respect of jobs to rest. Mr. Surjit Bhalla, the member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, constantly keeps asking questions about jobs data when he has never worked on jobs in his life. And suddenly he's discovered jobs. Suddenly he's become very concerned because the data is showing that the news is bad.
Okay. So
both Mahesh Vyas and I am sorry to say, have taken Mr. Surjit Bhalla apart in the Financial Express. So let's stop fudging about jobs data. The jobs data is really rock solid, and this reflects the fact that there are many fundamentals in the economy which are not doing so well. Yes, it might be true that public investment in rural areas on account of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana might have increased. Yes, it is true that, more rural roads are being built than they were earlier. So some rural jobs are getting created, no question. But the point is private investment is collapsed. Private investment is at 31%. And this claim about foreign direct investment, let's just remind ourselves. In the first 2 years, 2014-15 and 15-16, there was an upward swing in foreign direct investment into our country. 15-16, we got $65 billion. But in the next year, it came down to $45 billion. And in the last year, it came down to $40 billion, and which is exactly the amount of FDI that was coming in on average over the 10-year period from 2004 to 14.
All right, Mr. Mehrotra. Yes. In fact, let me just add this piece of data.
In the FDI in the last 2 years.
Yeah,
All right, both
just
Mr.
10 seconds,
Mehrotra and
10
Mr.
seconds.
Guruswamy, 1 second, Mr. Agarwal, both Mr. Mehrotra and Mr. Guruswamy agreed that the CMIE, which is the Center of Monitoring of Indian Economy, is the data point that we can trust. According to the CMIE, 2017-18 employment rate fell to 41.45% compared to the 42.59% in the previous year. So the CMIE data for this year actually shows that unemployment rate has actually increased and we have higher unemployment in the country. Do we have time to take one last answer from Mr. Vinod Jain? Mr. Vinod Jain, I saw you had your hand up. You backing the government. You in fact questioned the data that was put out by Mr. Guruswamy and Mr. Mehrotra. Go ahead, your rebuttal, Mr. Jain.
I think if you believe only on the data which is published by the labor survey, that's not really enough, because they are talking only of labor. They are not talking of people who are self-employed. For example, if you see just GST data, which is duly authenticated, more than 40 lakh
I'm sorry, he's mistaken.
people are
That's why
additionally.
People who don't know
No, please allow me to say.
Not talk about jobs.
Please allow me to say.
Of course, the Labour Bureau talks about informal sector.
No, I think some people
Mr.
think
Jain,
that they only know about jobs by creating falsified reports. By creating falsified reports, you are publishing a falsified report and then you say people don't know anything about data.
But no, Mr. Jain, on what basis? 1 second. How can you say falsified report? I'm sorry.
On the basis of government data, unbelievable. Mr. Jain, this is unbelievable. Faye, how are you going to allow this kind of...
No, 1 second. Gentlemen, please. Mr. Jain, on what basis are you saying falsified report? Mr. Jain, on what basis are you accusing another panelist of falsifying data?
That's not a fact.
How do you know that?
Tell us, Mr. Jain.
No, he has not falsified data. I am talking of the report.
On what basis? On what basis are you saying falsified? It's a very serious accusation to make,
Mr. Jain. The facts itself are false, actually.
I'm an author of the report.
That's what I'm saying.
No, hang on. No, Mr. Jain, I'm going to stop you there.
If you allow me to speak only, then
no, I'm not going to. Mr. Jain, I'm going to stop you there because you have not been able to justify the basis on which you said falsified report, and you cannot trade accusations on the channel like this without proper proof. The truth is, the people who've called us on the phone line this entire time, and we haven't had the opportunity to take as many calls as we like, they've all shown a concern about one very simple thing. Why doesn't the government allow us to verify all of the claims it's making, the number of highways that it's building, the GDP numbers, all of these numbers, informal, formal, should be verified, and there does seem to be a very deep concern about the job crisis in our country. There are several problems. The problem of inflation, the problem of interest rates, the problem of job crisis, the problem, of course, of NPAs. What is left in our hands at the end of the month after we're done with all our expenses? That's really the way we find out whether the economy is doing well or not. And if you look around you, you will get a general feel of how your colleagues and your friends and the people who work with you also have in sentiment. There is a festive season around the corner, and a good economy would have led to a rousing festive season. I hope we have a rousing festive season, but that shouldn't stop us from asking these questions at a timely fashion of, are we really doing well? Is our economy healthy? And by that extension, can we really offer the youngest country in the world enough opportunities for its young people? That's on us, and that's on the government of the day. Thanks for watching.